going to start talking about the shape tool. In that, we're also going to be learning about our third best friend, the layers and learning to use the move tool all simultaneously. Hopefully you have read through this PE3 shapes, layers, and move. The shape tool, like it says, you guessed it, of course it makes shapes. However, it is a different type of tool. It's something called a vector tool. You're going to be using the tool options bar to make a lot of different changes to the shape instead of using the foreground color box at the bottom. And I'm going to be talking about them all at the same time. When you go to make a shape, it will automatically make itself into its own layer. Layer order matters, and we'll be able to kind of layer shapes and start to create different objects. The layer palette, there is a lot of different things that I'm going to be going over with this. When you go to make your shapes, you're also going to need to be aware of the move tool. The shape tool is down here. Yours may be a heart, yours may look like something a little different. It's the one that is below the gradient. If you right click or long click on it, you will notice that you have many different options. Rectangle tool makes rectangles and squares. The ellipse tool makes ovals and circles. The polygon tool, this is the one I'm going to start with. The polygon tool does exactly what it sounds like. So moving up to my tool options bar, I can choose my number of sides. This is also where you're going to choose the color of your polygon. We'll talk about style a little bit later on. So click and drag, and I have a polygon. I want to change the color of it. I'm going to come up here and change it to something else. And as I go through and continue, I will change my number of sides, get a new polygon. I'm going to change the color of this one to something else. And you will notice, now I'm going to move over to my move tool. I have two different layers, my first shape and my second shape. It thumbnail views what the shape is, and it automatically names it as shape and in whatever order you have created them. I'm going to click on my move tool, and my move tool is going to box around or show this bounding box of my shape. Now if I move this shape under here, you can see, obviously you can't see it. Why? That's because it is in a layer below the other one. So if I want this layer to be seen, I'm going to take and click and drag and drop so that the layer is on top. And now it kind of looks like a flower. So as you start to put some different shapes together, you might be able to create something that could be part of your product or part of your layout for your advertisement. The polygon tool also gives you something else besides polygons. If you click on this first little thumbnail view here, you notice you have a down arrow and you have different options. And I'm going to change it to stars. Now, instead of sides, it's going to be points. So if I wanted to create the center part, and I'm going to change my color again to an orange. Oh, I was on that same thing. Undo. I'm going to click on my background layer, and I'm going to then go in and pick another color. I can always click on more options, and it'll bring me to the window that I know. Click and drag and create my star. Now, again, why is it on underneath? Because it is on a bottom layer. So I'm going to take this layer, drag it to the top, and there is my star. Being that I am still on the shape tool, it is not going to let me move it. What do I need to use? I need to go to my move tool. And now I can place that on the inside. The move tool does many other things. You'll notice on the corners, if I grabbed one of the corners, I can resize it. So the move tool does a lot of different things. It resizes as well as rotates. There's a little rotate handle down here on the bottom that I need if I wanted to turn it in whatever direction. So the move tool is very useful in many different ways. However, when you go to use your move tool, you need to hit the green check mark to say, okay, I'm done using the move tool, and then you'll be able to move on. If you don't hit the green check mark, you won't be able to move on. The line tool gives you exactly what it sounds like, lines. One of the options up at the top is something called weight. That is the thickness of the line. So if you needed to make any kind of straight lines, and obviously that, but it will create a new layer for each time you make a line. I'm going to go through and delete my layers by clicking on the little trash can because I don't want them. So I'll just click delete and hit enter, delete, and enter. Get rid of all of those. The last shape that I'm going to talk about is the custom shapes tool. Now the custom shapes gives you a ton of other different types of shapes. So I'm going to click on a different layer first. I'm going to change my color to something else entirely. And I have a thumbnail view. Hit the down arrow. Here's a ton of different shapes of different types of arrows. However, if you go over here to the right, notice, like with your gradients, there is a down arrow, and you have all these other different categories. You are going to start with the default categories, and you'll see that are also in other categories. So as you are, say, I'm trying to create some kind of, so say I wanted to create maybe a forest or something of that nature, I could go through and make some trees, create a bit of dimension. So I'm going to make my next tree a darker green. So it looks like I'm kind of layering a couple of different trees. Move tool and place them accordingly. And you'll notice as you're moving or clicking on your different things, it does create a box around whatever you're about to grab. So if you're trying to grab onto something particular with the move tool, you can wait until you see the blue box appear around the object. Now with your trees, you might want to color the trunk differently. Now the shape tool is, again, like I said, it's something called a vector tool. The vector tool does not allow you to come in here and change each individual colors. We can do some, if you wanted to, and you wanted to create a different colored trunk, you can create new layers by clicking on this little piece of paper over here. And again, let the software talk to you. I'm going to take this layer and put it in front. Say I'm not going to move these 3 trees, so now I'm going to come in here with my paintbrush, and I'm going to go for a brown. Make my brush way smaller. Zoom in so I can see what I'm doing. And on this new layer, I can use my paintbrush to make it look like the bases of the trees are a different color. I'm going really quickly, it would be a little bit better. I would then want to rename my layer to be trunks, because that is the trunks of the trees, just so that I know what I have in there. And I'll go back to zoom, fit screen, and they look more a bit like trees as opposed to all one color tree. As you're working, you can click on the layer. Your active layer is the light gray one. You can change the order of your layers. You can create a new layer. You can temporarily make layers invisible. Let's go into that. If I didn't want to see the different layers on the layer palette over here on the right, there's this little tiny eyeball. If you click on the eyeball, it will make whatever is in that layer invisible temporarily. It doesn't delete the layer, it just takes it out of your way temporarily, just so you can see what is going on. And the shape tool can be really useful in a lot of different ways. So I am going to go back up into this layer right here. Go back to my shape tool. there was one last tool option that we didn't talk about, and that's style. Now, in what you learned in art, to make anything look 3D, there are some things that you need to add. Right now this looks very flat or 2D. To make it 3D, you need to add highlight and shadow to create some kind of dimension. So you will go in, and the first things that you're going to see is different types of shadow. And as I click on the different shadows, you can see that it will change. But again, click on the little tiny arrows on the right, more options. Right now I'm in a drop shadow. The first thing is something called a bevel. The bevel adds highlight to an edge. So I'm going to, indeed with have my shadow, I'm also going to add a highlight. Now, when you go to click in every category that you are in, it applies over itself. So if you needed to clear something out, you would remove your style. I'm going to go back into Inner Glow. Inner Glow creates dimension within the shape. So if I wanted to create some kind of different options inside my shape, you can see how this does change some things on the inside of the shape. There's also outer glows. This is going to be on the outside of the shape. And you can see that now the star kind of looks like it's floating. I'm going to remove my style, bring it back to the 2D dimension. And there are several other options below. Complex. Complex gives you a different series of fills. So inside it will change the color of it, and it may also put on a bevel, it may also put on a shadow, a lot of different options. But again, like I said before, they kind of apply over each other. So though I went through and applied some of these, if I went in and removed my style and then went back and applied it again, I'm going to get a different look. This will allow you to create some more unique options if you are using shapes. I wanted to go back to the Move tool really quickly to show you one of the other things it does. Remember I said it resizes, so if you drag, and you can see how it kind of changes the fill a bit when you do that. It also will rotate, but it also lets you flip it. So if, for example, I'm going to make a new shape. Remember, when you're finished with your shape tool, hit your green check mark. I'm going to go into my tool options, and I'm going to find a shape that goes in one particular direction. I'm going to go into this leaf pattern. I'm going to take my style off, blue, click and drag my shape. Now I want to go to my Move tool. I don't want it to go in this direction, I want it to go in the other direction. So I'm going to grab on the side, and I'm going to click and drag and pull it across itself. This is how you flip different objects as needed.